on. We're still on the Children's Services 25. We've done the prevention issues. Children's Services, anybody? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Chairman.
Can I ask what is statutory provision when it comes to youth services? I mean, we see money being cut year on year, but when we finally go down, when the council finally goes down to statutory provision, what does that entail?
Good question, Chairman. I'd like to ask an officer to answer that. I don't know what the minimum statutory level is, but I do know that actually the government's increased that threshold, looking to increase that threshold.
Mr. Mercer.
The government has recently published a new set of guidance about the responsibilities of local authorities across a wide range of services for youth. Not only the traditional youth activities, but also in relation to full connections activities and a range of other things. Therefore, we are looking at this very carefully to see what we need in the budget in order to continue to deliver those services. In particular, for example, we retain the statutory responsibility to track young people as they currently leave education at 16 and go on into either employment or training or other things. We need to continue to do that. We need to continue to publish a prospectus of positive activities across the borough throughout the year. We need to continue to target young people who have particular needs, and of course that's part of our early intervention work. So there are a series of things we need to continue to do.
Sorry, Mr. Mercer, that's all very interesting and I'm sure highly relevant. But what actual youth service, what members would understand by youth service, do we statutorily have to provide? Tracking young people is not actually providing a youth service. Publishing prospectus is not providing. What actual, as councils would understand, in days gone by, youth services with youth clubs, detached youth workers, this, that and the other. Is there any youth service that we have to provide?
We have to have a regard, what the law says is we have to have a regard to providing activities and recreational opportunities for young people. That is the statutory requirement. But we continue to provide youth activities on a targeted basis for young people. And those are traditional youth service activities.
Are we funding these clubs?
We fund youth activities, and we will be continuing.
Are we funding detached youth workers anymore?
Yes, we are.
We are. Right.
So does having regard to in effect mean there is no statutory provision? I mean, that you could totally remove youth provision.
Yeah, well, my understanding, Chairman, is that having regard to is a former and proper consideration of the need of the area in relation to those activities. And that means no, we would not be doing nothing. We would continue to provide some activities. We would continue to
I just think we should be open and say, look, we're not providing youth services, we're not providing youth services. That's a political decision. And fair enough, may not be what everybody agrees with. But I'm just a bit confused as to what we actually are providing. But Councillor Thompson, I've seen.
Thank you. I see £250,000 of savings coming out of excluded students, pupil referral units. I would have thought pupil referral units would have been moved to the Barnet Schools Fund, and I wonder how we're going to be able to achieve that from saving.
Mr. Mercer,
Yes, we are looking at that carefully again to see whether that can actually be achieved and we can look for alternatives.
sorry, what does that mean? What does that mean? You don't think it can be achieved? £250,000 saving at the group?
Not at this time, no.
Right. So where are you looking for the £250,000?
We're looking at other efficiency savings and a range of other things.
Yes, thank you. Which is what, Mr. Mercer?
Chair, can I just say we are going to propose these in November. This is previously scrutiny, so perhaps you can some suggestions, Chair.
Indeed, but we've got to analyse and scrutinise what's before us. And if we don't, and I'm sorry, Councillor Thomas, one thing I am experiencing is budget scrutiny. And if we come back in November, it's far too late because you and your officers will quite rightly and correctly have dotted the I's and cross the T's.
But with respect,
So-
Chairman, if we now look at options, tell you what options we're looking at, and then none of them actually come to fruition, then we might be putting people out there and do worry. So actually,
I'm sorry, that's the way scrutiny works. I'm very sorry if you don't like it.
You'll make
But
it
it's the way scrutiny works. And the office has just told us that he can't find 250,000 on the
You
proof.
not say that, Chairman. You said we're looking to reconfigure that figure. As I said, some items in this budget will come in November, reconfigured.
Well, and when do you scrutinise those when they
Because
come?
another question that's come in this area is children on remand now come under the council's
Indeed.
area. So that is another question we need to look at.
Sorry, we will do budget scrutiny. Right? If the executive members don't like it, well, I'm very sorry, but that's how scrutiny works. Mr. Mercer, so where are you looking for this 250,000 that you can't find on the proof?
Well, Mr. Mercer has said efficiency savings.
Right, okay, we look forward to those. Children's Services, Councillor Moore?
I'm going to ask two questions. Before I do, I would just reflect that nearly £1 million coming out of the youth service is actually probably the final tranche of what was effectively going to take the youth service budget down to by 75%. And this was flagged over a number of years. So there is virtually no youth service left, but I'll leave that hanging. There are two specific questions I'd like to ask. One is around the Children's Centre budget line and the £500,000 that is predicated in savings in not next year, but the year after. And I'd like to ask very specifically whether that involves the closure of settings. And secondly, immediately below it, the Commission Services for Vulnerable Children and Families, £800,000 coming out in that area and the year after next. Among the list of services you have quoted within it, and I would like some details after the meeting about this, is domestic violence services. And so I would just like to have an idea of what, given I think domestic violence challenges are a significant issue for those families where there are problems, and it certainly has a real impact on the children involved in families, where those savings are going to come from, specifically in respect to domestic violence.
Chairman, I'll put that into the motion.
Mr. Mercer?
The £500,000 around children's centres, no, we were not looking at the closure of settings. And in relation to the 800,000 saving, which is around a number of contracts within which the domestic violence contracts was one area. But some of those contracts already have built-in savings requirements over the years leading up to that year 2 in this plan. And we would be looking to recommission all the contracts for domestic violence at a lower rate. So I can't tell you exactly which services that would mean, because that would depend on the procurement.
Just that line firstly is predicated on early intervention services, and I just want to get a sense of how that sits with the project that's currently being worked up. Secondly, if it's not closures of settings for children's centres, how will you reconfigure to save £500,000 in what is, and that's what, something like an eighth of the budget overall?
The budget for all services in relation to children's services is 4.3 million. Clearly this is an area where we are working on plans for year 2 of this plan. It is currently year 3. There are a number of possible options, but we'll bring those out through consultation in due course.
Councillor Cook?
Yeah, just picking up on what Mr. Mercer said just now, there's 800,000 coming out of commissioning budgets the year after next, but nothing in the next financial year. But he said that there were built-in requirements for savings on existing contracts. So how's that?
Mr. Mercer?
Generally, we've not built those into our budget plans. We will obviously seek to achieve them, and if we do achieve them, they may well offset other savings.
Right, okay, so there would be additional savings which would be very welcome towards our zero council tax target aspiration making council choices. Right, moving on to children's services, commercial services, I'm on page 27 of my pack. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you very much, Chairman. A couple of items which I'd like to pick up on. Reduction in cost of maintaining properties pending sale. Could you give me an idea of how you're planning to achieve that, and why isn't there why are you making any saving in 14-15?
Councillor Thomas, are you able to deal with that?
I mean, these are things like in the football club, and that's costing us money to boarding up and all that sort of thing. So with that sort of disposals list, and as the properties come off our disposals list, then we've lost the maintenance. You know, rather much like handing over property to Saracens, a saves more than £1,000 in running costs.
But won't there be also savings in the following year as well, which are not mentioned here?
Well, there will be extra savings, so those will carry on, and there won't be any new savings, so those will be built in then to the next year's baseline budget.
I'm not convinced with the 120,000 figure. How robust do you think that is?
If you look across our estates, and if you look at the pending properties for sale, you look at all the land that we've got, actually, you'd be quite surprised that that figure is reasonable.
Well, you're achieving it by selling them, by...
We no longer have to board them up, we maintain them.
So presumably there'll then be further properties coming up behind that we will have to maintain.
As we sell that, we've got less property there.
Presumably, we'll be selling more properties as the property market picks up. Presumably, one reason we have fewer.
But that was a...
One reason we're not selling properties as quickly is because why sell them at the bottom of the market? We're seeing the property market will pick up.
Well, we're not seeing any boom in the property market generally.
And that was 120,000. I can, moving on to, it's a wonderful word, transformation. Transformation of the estate services. I wonder if you can throw some light on that, please. £393,000 worth of transformation.
I think with that one, Chairman, I think if you look at our estates, look at NLDP, if you look at a Barnet House, if you look at all the sort of council land across the borough, we're not managing it as efficiently as we could be. Actually, if you look at one of the private estate management companies out there, I'm sure they could manage it a lot better. And that's where that comes in, particularly under the NFCSO. That'll be part of their job as well, is to manage the estates a lot more efficiently. Because the officers we've got in property, they aren't estate management specialists, they're not.
So, transformation, I still can't see the word transformation here.
Well, it's privatisation, outsourcing is part of the One Barnet project, am I right?
This can add some more detail, actually.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, under commercial services, the first three, so IS, procurement and estates, are all part of the contractual position that we'll reach with the NSCSO providers. So those savings in practice will be delivered by the contract savings that are predicated on that contract starting next year. So in here you see three separate lines, ultimately it will be part of that overall contract because all three of those services are part of the scope of that contract.
So just transformation, I read into religious conversion almost. But,
well, to some extent it depends on the, in terms of the service providers and their proposals that they bring forward and how they propose to make savings.
That's pretty fine, I think we understand your point, which is about use of flowery language.
I think Louise has mentioned completely
Councillor Thompson.
transconfiguration was the other word.
About substantiation, when you get into
Well,
that
let's go.
Councillor Thompson, looking at the 2014-15 year, where we've got 1.1 million penciled in for public office accommodation review. Presumably that's again the disposal of assets consideration. My only concern there is that if we are actually in a situation where the property market did actually have some sort of return, that probably would mean that we're not necessarily the best time to dispose of assets, and yet it would appear on paper to be the best time to dispose of them to meet the figures that you're putting in.
I'll take the lead on this, but of course the vast majority of our office accommodation is leased, isn't it?
Yes.
Barnet House and LBP, I'm not sure we own any more freehold offices.
It's like Barnet coming out of Barnet's house, which we've got empty floors in now, coming up there. NLDP release as well coming up. We negotiate them, given that commercial rents now are low.
Okay, I'm moving on quickly through corporate governance. Anybody? Councillor Ray now?
Thank you very much indeed. CAF has always been very efficient and saves more money than we actually spend on it from our discussions at the audit committee, I think. You're making savings of 9,000. Will they continue to be able to be as efficient in saving money as they always have been? Saving the council money, I think.
I have to say, I'm all for scrutiny, but 9,000 is probably just a basic clips budget. It's a very small amount. You say my words, it's not even a half-time post. Mr. Heaton, do you know what it is?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't know the specific detail, but in terms of that saving, that's potentially a day of a person.
You can email Councillor Rayner with the answer.
Thank you very much.
And the second item was, what presumptions are you making in order to save £20,000, 1415 on members' allowances, etc.?
And there probably have to be a review upwards, as we've had 3 for the last 4 years.
I wasn't necessarily thinking of that. The officer's presumptions might be different from yours,
It includes the training budget.
Oh, it's a training, but right, good, thank you. Anything else on that, mate? Political assistance deletion? Has that been agreed across party?
No, we don't support it, but it's, you know.
Open to further negotiation, Mr. Leaders?
I'm surprised to see the line there.
Right, okay, fine, we get that message. Moving on, the Deputy Chief Executive Services, on page 29, anything there, please? Councillor Mitra.
Thank you, Chair. 83,000 for vacancies in financial services. Does that mean that you're leaving posts unfilled? If so, why? I mean, if there are jobs that you need to hire, why are you leaving them unfilled?
Right, just delete them. If they're not needed. Mr. Heaton?
That's right. There are a couple of vacant posts and clearly.
But if they're vacant and you intend to be vacant for the whole financial year, why not delete them?
Well, in terms of the current year, there are some requirements for kind of interim temporary cover, and in effect next year that is just the deletion as the requirement for doing the work comes.
Simon?
Okay. Can I just ask for a bit more detail on the 2 HR ones? What efficiency savings in HR are saving 300,000 and what trade union savings are saving 80,000?
Each eye is one of the services going out to NSCA, so
So it's a one Barnet saving, really. Trade union facilities, is that?
that's already been cut, but we can look at that.
Well, no, it's in the...
It's already 80,000 in 2014.
Yeah, but further cut, yeah.
Further cut, good.
But
Excellent. It's not overdue.
sorry, just trying to ask exactly what that was.
Well, it's trade union facilities, I think, really with there without needing to go into details. Thank you, Councillor.
The other question I had on Deputy Chief Executive Services was, can you be sure that you're going to be able to get 154,000, seems very precise, increased income from deposits?
Particularly in new projects.
I can think that. I mean, it looks like a precise figure. It's the basis of an increase, a percentage increase in interest rates. The revised strategy in terms of so actually about a year or so ago, Cabinet approved a revised strategy which permitted the council to invest slightly longer and extend the banks that the council are able to deposit with to UK banks, Australian banks and Canadian banks. So still a very prudent strategy. However, slightly more freedom than was in place previously.
Mr. Leader,
And there's a slip of the tongue there, so not invest, deposit.
Deposit. So I corrected in my second.
You
second one.
Has that not already been implemented?
So what we're seeing is an increase in income from deposits this year. We are therefore confident we can increase the level of income in our budget next year. So actually, hopefully, that actually sees an overachievement of our target in this year, which will give us the confidence to be able to increase it next year. It's not assuming that interest rates will go up, because I think it's quite clear that they will not go up. But it's in effect baking into the budget.
Just as finally, can I just check it's not predicated on loosening the Treasury management strategy to do with the current levels?
No, guys, Jim, we're not loosening, actually, we're tightening up, we've taken all the European banks off our list.
Quite right.
So whilst we know the number of banks, they're in other countries other than Europe.
Right, moving on, environment planning and regeneration. Councillor Moore.
Significant savings in street scenes from alternative service provision. Clearly the line above is linked to the development and regulatory services package, though I would be interested in the details of the nearly 3 million that we're saving there, but specifically around the street scene. If you just say alternative service provision, what are the details of that?
Councillor Curry.
It's all connected to the May Gurney contract, which is to end in October 2013. And also you'll see later on also the street scene consolidation of nighttime functions, which are saving there.
Right, so the May Gurney is the recycling. That's covered the street scenes. I wasn't sure that was the right budget heading.
That's why I was querying it. When we
So that's just the saving on the recycling contract.
So it's £2 million over 2 years?
Well, it's just the May Gurney, but as a result of the May Gurney, and that will look at other things, maybe there's more information on the breakdown of it.
I see it was right to go to the table, because that's entirely out of it.
Ms. Wolf?
Yes, it will be a series of proposals about looking at how we better provide waste and street scene services in the borough.
Okay, can we just have the breakdown of this? Right, so I'm a bit confused. So some of this is a saving on renegotiating the May Gurney contract.
And some will be looking
Which is
at...
how much is that roughly? $500,000, quarter
No,
million?
no. I mean, it's £5 million because I don't want to provide figures without having come back to...
No, so it's about £2 million. May Gurney
It
renegotiations.
depends on the, obviously, Chairman, I apologise, but it depends on the negotiation about what method we use going into the future. It's tied up with our change to co-mingled collection, which members agreed earlier this year. So that's where the savings will come through not having two lots of collection. Combining the collection to not having so many co-mingles that pick up on the street rather than the two sets of vehicles. It would be looking at can we combine to have one vehicle which can do all.
There'll still be separate recycling collection.
The separate recycling collection, we might be able to have one vehicle that
Can do both. But I understand that. But so that's the million. So I'm sure what Councillor Moore was trying to get at is, are there any cuts in there to street cleaning?
There's one further down to do with the nighttime cleaning, nighttime functions, which is to do with cleaning.
So you're cleaning the streets during the day rather than the evening?
Yes.
Night. No, what I was actually getting at, Chairman, in terms of the street scene, was that actually it's about alternative service provision for a set of street services.
It's a combination looking at waste and the street scene overall in terms of procurement to see if there's a better way of doing it in the same way as we
So we could
across the
procure
Barnet programme.
recycling and street cleaning all for the same supplier.
Absolutely.
Right, I see.
It could be further outsourcing.
It could.
Councillor Mitro?
Would you mind providing to us a list of the services that you to outsource?
That's part of the one part meeting.
We will be
I
bringing...
think if you go to your papers on whichever project that is number 3, isn't it?
I'm sure it'll come to business management.
I think it'll be...
Come on to business management,
Right. Environment, Councillor Simon.
Thank you. I see the charging for car parks, free car parks is back in there. Is that coming back again?
No, it should be in there.
On the parking service, is the parking service delivering savings during the current financial year that would lead you to be confident that that savings will be delivered next year?
To 2013-14.
There's a saving of 62,000 from using the external contractor with consequential savings.
If I could just respond to that, I mean, the contract that we've entered into with NSL provides for future years in terms of what the cost is, and these figures reflect that schedule. So it's something we've signed up to with the new design.
And what are we thinking? Where are we thinking on the surplus on the parking account?
In terms of figures, parking, the special parking account, not the off-street parking. Yeah.
Special parking account, yeah.
Chairman, are you referring to this year?
Well, are we on target? I assume we're on target for this year.
There was some gap in the initial taking on of the contract, but in terms of it sort of a bit swings and roundabouts. So we've seen some improved figures on the CCTV on the bus lane. We've seen that they, after initial slow start, they recovered on getting.
Okay, it's all that's very interesting for those of us who are fascinated by parking. But are we on budget for surplus on special parking account?
We're on target for a surplus as we normally are, but there are pressures within the service in terms of getting money in.
So I'll take that as a no. And how much are we below the budgeted surplus?
I mean, the first quarter monitoring report will be coming to Care and Resources Committee in due course, and that details in there. I don't have the information directly to hand, but that's in due course. So you'll see that information Care and Resources Committee.
Sorry, right now, I'm conscious of time. We do want to discuss DOS, we must finish at 10 o'clock. I think half an hour for DOS, so can we whiz through Councillor Moore?
One very quick one in the context of how we're reprofiling the new fire installation. £200,000, quite a significant saving. What does that entail?
I think we've talked about it a number of times, councillors, where we're looking at changing the technology in the lamppost and therefore reducing the amount of energy that we use to light the switch.
And is it re-provision of delaying the new lampposts?
It's doing different things, it's putting technology in the existing lampposts that we don't need to replace.
Do I see Councillor Wayne?
Yes, you did. Are we moving on to special parking account, Chairman?
Anything to do with...
Thank you very much. Moving traffic violations, the £130,000 income there. That's for boxes and lanterns and presumably more extensive leasing of bus lanes, am I correct?
We only have one bus lane.
Bus lanes already.
What I'm a little bit confused is you've got 130,000 increased income in 2013-14. Are we all going to turn into angels the following year?
No, it goes in the base, Councillor.
Pardon?
Sorry, it goes in the base.
So that's an additional.
It's an ongoing saving, so it's realised in 13-14 and then it continues to be realised.
That's the first time it's realised.
That's the first time it's realised. Okay. Thank you very much.
It can only go up if London councils agree, because the level of the fines is not in this borough's gift. So there could be a further following year if London councils, which I'm afraid they always do, they put up the level of parking fines and infringement of fines. They went up this year. Despite her rates. Right now, I'm going to quickly...
I don't pay fines, so I don't know, Councillor.
Yeah. Councillor Cook?
There's been a lot of chopping and changing about whether or not charges will be made in the car parts where they're currently not charging is Barnet Village. Can I just ask Councillor Dick comes from you, Chair, whether this decision that the 7,000 should be there is definite, or is it to be considered in the future?
Cohen has answered that.
The last chairman decision was made quite a...
Councillor Cohen has answered that. Councillor Moore? No? Councillor Scheinman?
I did have the next page.
Councillor Cohen, if I can quickly, I'll just move on. Councillor Scheinman?
Well, actually, can I just, is there, what scope is there in the budget regarding reducing the current level of parking charges, which have been, looked at as part of the town centre?
I suspect you know the answer to that. We've answered it, Councillor. But Councillor Cohen?
The charges that obviously that to be reduced is to have more people, and Councillor Allen, the more people, that means more turnover. So there's nothing specific that's been allocated for the change in pricing.
Okay, and I think the earlier answer, Councillor Charles confirmed that the inflation-linked rises on fees and charges. Councillor Mitchell, did I see you? All right, moving on.
Not inflation-linked or
That's what she said. It's my
Actually, the committee seems to agree that that's not what I said, Chairman.
So there's no inflation-linked rise?
No, we've not. I confirm this council does not have a policy on inflation-linked fees and charges.
exactly.
They can be done without
There's both of us.
Right, okay, moving on from special parking capital. Is there anything else on budget? Quickly. Sorry, Councillor West, what are you indicating on? What do you want to say?
Chairman, I have to answer a question that was put earlier through you. The retender and meals at home figure was £10,000.
That's not a substantial saving if we're retaining the contract, is it?
The question was asked through you as to what figure was that was missing in the paper. I simply provided the answer, Chairman.
It's a small contract now, is it?
Yes.
Is it? No, right, okay. Okay, right, moving on. Councillor Boyd?
Yes, the appendix,
Yes.
the appendix from one Barnet savings. And I realise that, obviously we've gone through the individual budget heads, and there are savings set against the project within those schedules. However, we don't really have any details, and my challenge with this is actually assessing whether those savings are either sufficiently challenging or too optimistic. And therefore, I would just like some narrative around that. There isn't any commentary around those particular savings, or actually links to the risk around those both being delivered and around the service quality coming from those. So it would be helpful to have those provided. And my gut feeling is that some of the detail may well have been in the exempt papers for the 2 updated business cases. We've had problems with exempt papers over the cycle of the One Barnet project. Is it possible to have those blue papers so it is possible to at least look at detail and interrogate some of those figures?
Sorry, presumably blue papers are available to any councillor who wishes to see them.
And some of the One Barnet scrutiny sessions, they've actually been issued and withdrawn.
Well, that's not a practice I approve of, but as far as I'm aware, any councillor can go and view or see or have available to them any paper of the council. So, to you, Councillor Moore, to ask the Chief Executive for a copy of the relevant papers, I would suggest, but that's the usual rules about blue papers and black.
Well, I'm actually going to ask the leader actually that we can ensure that we have all of the relevant information so that we are able to judge the savings that have been predicated here through the One Barnet projects. The specifically NSCSO and DRS, because they're clearly those which are in the budgets explicitly.
Of course the answer is yes there, but I am concerned as to where we cross the line to interfering with the procurement. I mean, given that it's at the stage it's at now. But in principle, yes, of course.
We have some difficulty here because you have a forward plan budget that's predicated on savings that are allocated against service heads,
Yes.
and in some areas, and there are very particular projects there, but we've got no detailed narrative around that.
But by the time the budget is considered, there will be much better.
Through you, Chairman, to Mr. Charwood, when he makes notes on a discussion on the budget this evening, if he could make them as detailed as possible, rather than just a generic, the committee discussed this budget hearings. It would help when we come to next discuss the...
And bearing in mind, of course, this committee has a statutory role in the budget process. Councillor Schreiber?
On the one Barnet savings, which are always very okay, I noticed in the table and in 9.2 it talks about total savings of 14.6 million up to 2015. But just earlier today, I was just looking at the papers from the budget. At the time the budget was set, and it talked about savings of over 16 million by 2015. 14.15. So I just wondered, there seemed to, 1.4 million seemed to have gone missing between the time the budget was set and the savings that are now included in the report here.
Chairman, we are looking at more up-to-date figures in this table, and I'll say, there are, as I said at the start, the figures that we presented tonight, they're a year old now, and of course services and budgets and all sorts of things have moved on. So things, when these figures come back to us in November, they will be changed. We were ambitious with the competitive dialogues as to try and get them done within 12 months. There is a bit of slippage there over a matter of months, and that will affect the savings in year for next year, of course, as to how much savings are made then. But overall, if you look overall, up until 2019, I'm confident that the savings made overall will increase.
So, Tom, were you saying that this table was a year, this table here is a year out of date?
This appendix is up to date. And Councillor Schneider was looking at the budgets, the schedule of savings from last year. So it's
not from last year, from earlier on this year. Maybe we could be providing with a breakdown of where that 1.4 million pounds has gone. Because it actually says.
So just so I'm clear in my mind, you're saying that the budget that the council agreed in March had a figure of X savings.
Yeah, in the paper.
Had a figure of X savings against it for one budget. You're now saying that in the current year, the savings are X minus 1.4 million?
Yes. Well, yes, I'm saying there's a difference between the figure that was in the budget papers and the figure that
For which year? For the current year?
Well, the savings for one Barnet up to 2014-15.
Oh, so not in the current year.
Not the current financial year. But
So it could just be a reprofiling of savings.
well,
we can update the committee on that. It'd be very easy to explain, Chairman.
In other words, savings haven't disappeared, they're just being reprofiled.
Yes, as would Chairman, a narrative under each of these projects.
Okay.
That was what I was asking for, so you could actually do that kind of calculation and track things through, because there's been...
Okay,
there's
I
a worry
must move on, Councillor Moore. Thank you. Can I thank members and officers? I know that struggling is always to draw up the budget, and I'm also grateful that it's come to this committee at this time in the cycle, Mr. Hooton, and I know that's involved you in some piece of work already. Right.
Do we have to agree with recommendations?
We just note at this stage, unless somebody wants to move something else, I just need to note the report and the answers given.
Agreed.
As members agree, so we just note the report and the answers given. Okay, can we then move on to item 8?